Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya and welcome to another episode of Mainframe Matters. And today we have with us once again, after a long time, Derek Britton, co-chair of the COBOL Working Group at the Open Mainframe Project. Derek, it's great to have you back on the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. And if I'm not wrong, this month we are celebrating 65th anniversary of COBOL. Is that correct?
It is, yes. It's amazing to imagine, but yes, it's 65th birthday this month.
And then we look at like technologies which are 65-year old. Sometimes people ask, hey, what is the role of that technology in the modern world? So if you can talk about the role COBOL is playing in today's world.
Okay, well, let me start you off with my journey with Cobol to give you some context as to sort of, how I've come to be part of the Cobol Working Group in the Open Mainframe Project, to kind of set the scene a bit. And it goes back a long way. I mean, not as far as Cobol, it's not 65 years ago, not quite, but my journey started with Cobol when I was at university. In fact, it was the first language I learned on that course, on a computer science degree course. I did an internship at a Cobol compiler company. They used Cobol, but they built it as well. And I returned there to help write the compilers and then do product management and marketing for the organization that was known as Micro Focus. And worked with them all the way up to including the 60th anniversary celebrations about 5 years ago. So I've seen Cobol from quite a few angles for over 30 years now. I reckon some people have joked if you cut me in half, it will say Cobol in a ring or around the middle. So, that's my reason for caring about the language and having sort of, some experience with it. And so, I understand sort of the context of where the industry is using it still today.
So if you can talk about, where is COBOL in the modern world, that would be great as well.
Some people are asking, well, so is COBOL still relevant today? And that's a fair question. If it's it's such an old technology, how could it still be so valuable? Well, actually, it's more prevalent, admittedly, behind the scenes than most people realize. You pick up your mobile phone and check your bank account balance, or get a quote for an insurance product like a car insurance or something, or send some money to someone, or ship a parcel, or book a holiday. The applications that are on your phone are actually, they're connecting to systems that are probably running a COBOL application for you, probably on a mainframe at the back end, and have been doing so successfully for a very long time. And those applications have continued to evolve and, improve their security and their transaction throughput, but all the while it's COBOL, doing the number crunching, doing the data processing at the back end for you. So one study revealed that the COBOL is, the average person is touching COBOL 7, 8, 9 times a day, probably without even realizing it. So it's still extremely relevant, even though it's sort of, not spoken about because it's, it never fails.
Now let's talk about this anniversary. Of course, as you said, it's September is being celebrated, but 65th anniversary. Talk a bit about when it is and how are you folks celebrating it?
Again, just to go back a couple of years, we realized that for quite a long time, and it was nagging at me, that COBOL, isn't everyone's favorite language. It isn't fully understood, but isn't necessarily liked particularly much. Largely overlooked by many, but not enjoyed by purist technologists who, prefer other languages. And COBOL has received quite a lot of criticism over the years. And it was actually for that reason that we set up the Open Mainframe Project COBOL Working Group just under 5 years ago now. And it was in response to things that have been happening during the COVID pandemic, where COBOL had been criticized for not being able to support, the new needs of the digital era in the pandemic. And it wasn't true. It was incorrect. But, moving on a couple of years with the work that the COBOL Working Group has done, we thought, well, it would be a good time to remind the industry and the world in general of COBOL's enduring value on its birthday year. So September 1959 was the first time that the term COBOL was coined as a phrase. They hadn't finished the specification at that stage, but the name COBOL was born in September 1959. So we felt that was the right time to celebrate its anniversary because it came into existence in the minds of the people who were building it. And so that's why we thought, right, well, what shall we do? How shall we celebrate? And we came up with a few ideas. And if I may, one of the concepts that we thought of is because it's its 65th anniversary, it's 65 is often a number in people's lives that's associated with retirement. And we thought, well, is it a retirement party or is it just a birthday party, a big birthday party? And we thought, well, what would be the right thing to do? And of course, in anyone's birthday party, they receive cards, they receive messages. We thought, well, the right thing to do would be to invite people who still use COBOL today, who are still associate it and understand it, to offer their thoughts. So instead of doing a big survey or just coming up with our own perspective, we started asking around, asking the COBOL community, what were their thoughts? Could they write a birthday message to COBOL to celebrate its anniversary? And so that's what we set about doing.
Can you also talk a bit about some of the initiatives at the Open Mainframe Project or by the larger mainframe community? Of course, you're part of the working group, which are being done around COBOL.
Well, I mean, in celebration of its anniversary, the really important thing that I've been concentrating on is pulling together some meaningful, tangible evidence of people's perspectives of the language in celebration of its birthday. And so we've assembled this concept of a guest book, which is just to invite people for their commentary, and dozens of people have replied, and we've just assembled, according to their role, according to their function, pulled a guest book together, and that's then informed, a narrative that is a story that we want to tell to the community. So, through channels like yours, but also through the Tech Channel publication and others, we want to tell that story, and we're going to publish a range of articles explaining what the input has been and what the overwhelming sense of perspectives were about the COBOL language. And of course, it isn't all a bed of roses. There are challenges that COBOL faces, and some of the quotes talk about that too. So it's a sort of fairly balanced perspective of where the language sits today and what its future might look like. Now, more broadly around the language itself, the Open Mainframe Project continues to do a range of other work around the COBOL language. So there's the COBOL Check initiative, and there's the excellent COBOL training course that's been developed. And there'll be a range of talks given at various upcoming industry shows in the coming months about the new facilities that the OMP have done. The OMP has a summit in October where it's going to showcase some of the work it's been doing lately. And I know that elsewhere in other shows that we have a session on COBOL and a session on IT skills coming up as well, where we'll tell the same story. So I'm looking forward to a busy 6 months.
When you mentioned guest book, can you talk about who is in it, and if you can share some of the comments that you have received where you're like, hey, this is exciting, or they're like, this was expected?
Yeah, let's talk about a couple of the entries in the guest book. So, I mean, first, crucially, what we wanted to do is get some perspective from different kinds of people associated with COBOL. So, firstly, crucially, we thought it was important to get perspective from organizations, from companies who are using COBOL to continue to build their IT systems today. Because really, the lifeblood of COBOL is the people who use it to build applications. And so we have comments from end user organizations and their perspectives on how they are continuing to use the language and its value to them. So interestingly, we're hearing some metrics in terms of the amount of COBOL that still gets generated, the number of applications that get deployed on a regular basis, and the continued value that they associate with COBOL for their organization. The next category was consultants. So technologists who understand COBOL and how it works, but use it day in, day out to provide application delivery to to end customer clients. So they are people who they don't just work for one organization. They may have worked for several organizations, but using COBOL to deliver value to those businesses across the way. And we thought that they would have a much broader, wider set of perspectives. And there's been some very interesting anecdotes from one or two of those. Um, Thirdly, there are those who, and this is crucial. This is crucial as we think about the future of COBOL. There are, those who teach the language either to professionals. They're either, a professional training organization, or they are academics. They're professors. They teach COBOL to students to get a sense of not only why they continue to see the value in teaching that language, but also, what's the level of demand for COBOL, as a point of education, and also it was illuminating to see just how where it's being used and where it's being taught, just how important COBOL is to the classroom. And then finally, we've gotten some input from what I would call technical experts, people in the community who they've written the compilers, or they've built the systems, they've been instrumental in delivering technology. People who really understand the back end, typically mainframe and COBOL world. So potentially vendors, but also independent technology people. So just wanted to get the perspective of those who were really trusted, that knew their COBOL, um, to see what they had to say. And then finally, as you would expect, and we wouldn't have been able to do this without then asking everyone on the COBOL Working Group committee to have their say. And as you know from you've met many of them, you would expect us all to have strident comments about the COBOL language, and of course that's what we've done.
Can you talk about what's next, not only for COBOL, for Open Mainframe, or for the working group?
Well, I think the next great frontier for many of us in the technology space isn't anything to do with COBOL at all, isn't necessarily to do with the mainframe either. But it's something that's on everyone's lips, and it's something that everyone agrees with is going to probably disrupt the way we see technology and how it can be delivered, and what to expect from technology. And that's, of course, artificial intelligence. And it's really interesting. I was at the Share community show only a few weeks ago, and AI was on everyone's lips, of course, as you would expect. But rather than it just being an idea in people's minds now, we were seeing a lot of new innovative ideas from the vendors, but also from customers coming along saying, we think we found a reason that artificial intelligence, needs to play in the back end business system space as well. There's a number of points where what artificial intelligence can do to augment or to accelerate or to enhance what many, good technologies are already doing, to deliver value, to deliver updated systems and applications more quickly into the mainframe, and that includes those COBOL applications. Um, they are real talking points right now, and I know there's a number of vendors. I won't name names because I don't want to be unfair to those I don't mention. There are a number of vendors who are putting a lot of stock and a lot of investment into building sort of AI accelerated versions of their technology to really deliver the next chapter of innovation. And that will be to the people who build COBOL systems every day. They're using DevOps to build mainframe COBOL applications, and they're trying to accelerate that pace of change. And I think AI and COBOL, that will be a point of intersection with some very exciting use cases over the next couple of years. And I suspect we'll be back here again talking about, the changes that that's brought about in the marketplace over the coming months and years. That, things will change once again, and we'll enter a new dawn, and COBOL will still be part of it.
I'm tempted to ask, if you look at the modern world, there are a lot of open source programming languages. Can you talk about what edge do you see COBOL has over others?
I'm often asked, what makes COBOL so special that it's lasted so long? What makes it better than other languages? Um, and it's not better or worse than other languages. It's just designed to do certain things. And of course, it's very good at at data manipulation because it's got that data typing, very strong data typing built into its syntax, built into its mechanics, built into its original design. It's got a very, very high numeric accuracy because of again, because of the typing and because of the picture causes that it uses to define its data. Um, so, it's ready made for the business function that it serves. Um, but interestingly, and I'll take you a long way back in history as well to answer the question, COBOL was devised in 1959, not because they wanted to write COBOL, but because they wanted a simple and single solution to a couple of complex challenges. One, but at the time, you had to be a very, very smart, you know, gifted uh, scientist to be trained in assembly program or Fortran in order to get a computer to work. And that wasn't a scalable model. Remember, every machine had its own assembly language and it had its own version of technology because there was no such thing as standardization then, not in the 1950s. COBOL was developed so that it could run on any machinery without change, but also that it could be learned by anybody. And back then that mattered a lot because there wasn't such a thing as a computer science degree. There wasn't, there wasn't a ready-made supply of computer science engineers ready to take on the role of building new systems. And so you had to find these people from somewhere else. And they were coming from the finance department. They were coming from other departments in the organization. They were being retrained as technologists. And so the language that they used to instruct the computer what to do had to be as straightforward as possible to learn. And of course, Fortran and assembler were never and still have never become straightforward to learn. They're quite hard. Whereas COBOL, because of its English-like nature, was having been designed that way, was there to resolve, what at the time was the post-war skills challenge. There was no such thing as a technologist. We talk about the skills challenge in 2024, and those things never go away because it's always a constant refresh. But COBOL actually was developed to solve the original skills challenge from a technology perspective, which I find more than a little bit curious. But I think that's why COBOL is different and why it still can be talked about in this way, and it's why it's still in the top 20 of languages in terms of popularity, according to at least one survey. So I think that's why it has enduring value and why we will continue to speak about it as long as you'll have me on the program.
Can you also talk about what kind of demand for COBOL do you see there, and what kind of things you folks are doing to attract modern developers towards the language and the platform itself?
Yeah, the question about skills around the COBOL language, skills in the mainframe world in general, but I mean the IT skills challenge is actually one, and it's a serious existential challenge to all older technologies. What's the next generation going to feel about the technology, and how are they going to be turned on to it or tuned into it? So the Open Mainframe Project has a number of initiatives ahead, and it's actually found it's located a number of new apprenticeships through the work of many of its members. There's an apprenticeship program that's been started in the US that's had 300 people enroll in an apprenticeship program for COBOL and mainframe. Just since it's been started off, I know they've identified over 1,000 people who are interested in COBOL who want to come into the program. But more generally, it is about making sure that IT skills from a general perspective is seen at a C level as an ongoing requirement. That if you accept that the systems will be valuable for a longer time than you realized, then you have to then build in a training program to allow for new skills to come into the business. That's been done brilliantly well by a number of organizations, and it's taking that blueprint as a model and making that available to others and working with academia as well. And there are some great colleges that still train plenty of COBOL programmers, and it's just pulling those two things together. And that's what the Open Mainframe Project continues to do. But I have to stress, you're never done with this. In 10 years' time, if we think that everything's going to be okay, the problem will still surface again. It's not a problem just about COBOL. COBOL appears to be the one that has the biggest problem because it's been the most successful for the longest. But this will also be true for other technologies that have been around a long time, going into the future. And in fact, it probably already is for some. So it's something that we have to keep an eye on, and places, people like the Open Mainframe Project, they are worth their weight in gold because of the amount of attention they're putting on it.
Derek, once again, thank you so much for joining me today. Talk about not only the history, a story of COBOL, but also, celebrating 65th anniversary. Thanks for great insights. And as usual, I look forward to talk to you again soon. Thank you.
So, no, bye-bye.